So today we're going to start with some basics of lighting design, and there's essentially three different areas that we can look at to adjust to create a lighting design and to adjust and make choices around to craft something specific for a show. Those three areas are direction, which can also be referred to as angle, intensity, or level is another way to put that, and color. Color and intensity we're going to get to later. We'll touch on color a little bit here. Color is just like color, red, blue, green, any of those choices. Intensity is going to be anywhere from 0 to 100%. And then really what we're going to be focusing on is this one right here to begin with, the direction and angle. So we're going to talk about first the McCandless method. McCandless has set the, it's named after a gentleman who developed it. It's set the lighting standard for, and I want to highlight theatrical lighting design as opposed to dance. And why we're doing that is theater is going to be a lot more connected to the face. There's a big importance on the face. In theater as opposed to something like dance, right? Dances are more oriented towards the body. And so McCandless is really emphasizing the face and the importance of the face. A couple of key components, at least two lights from opposite sides of the stage. We'll talk about degrees here in a second. It's kind of good to think about these kind of in the way you might think of lines intersecting a cube. Right, so we're, as though we were a hollowed out cube, and how different lines would intersect with that. The other key component that we're going to touch on less today is the color component of McCandless, and that's making sure that one direction has a cool color and one direction has a warm color. They also refer to these occasionally as blue and amber. I don't like the absolute component of that. Color-wise, so I'm going to steer towards more warm and cool, but it's essentially getting at the same thing. So now we're going to talk about the angles in McCandless. So the McCandless is all built around the angles of the lighting choices that you're making. The key is McCandless wants a 45-degree angle hitting the face of where your light is positioned, so if this is the light. And that's just because it gives you a lot of full front light with still just kind of enough shadows to begin sculpting and creating some more interesting depth and looks. If you do something like go 90 degrees, that's a lot of top light. It's going to be a lot of shadows. And then if you can go the other direction, that's backlight. You won't see the face at all. You can come all the way out in the front and hit somebody directly from the front with the light, which is going to give you a lot of front light, but it's going to be very bright and there's not going to be any shadows. Makes it harder to kind of play with more intricacies in lighting design. So if we take a look at this kind of on a face, from a face kind of perspective, what we're looking at is if this is 45 degrees, we're gonna see kind of just a few shadows kind of in this area, right? These are in these kind of areas, maybe a little bit under the chin, but not a lot, just enough, and they'll get filled in. And we'll talk about the other secondary light after this. But if you do something, for instance, if you go way over the top, and then you're gonna have a lot of really long shadows under here, and that's not going to look very good, and it's going to be harder to combat all of that. Consequently, again, if you were to go the other direction and come more straight on, it's actually going to look fairly similar to this face, but that's not very interesting because that's flat. So it's going to be less engaging and less that you can do to make it interesting. So then if we come back and we look at the 90-degree separation between the two of them, again, these are what you're shooting for. Nothing's absolute, and every theater space is different, so it's going to be really tricky to emulate that. But why this is important is because of the color differentiation. So you're going to want a warm color coming from one direction, and then if we come up here, we're going to want a cool color coming from the other direction. Why is this? Well, what you're doing essentially is you're dividing this in half so that you're allowed to get you're able to get some sculpting in of the face and of the shadows, but you're also getting a solid amount of front light. So if you come straight on, the more straight you get, the fewer shadows you're going to have, and there's less opportunity for that depth to play in. And then the further away you get, obviously you're going to have shadows on one side of the face. So if we take a look at this, if we take a look at this option on this guy, what we're talking about is, you know, you're going to have blue on coming from one side, and then we're going to have ambers coming from the other, or some kind of warm color coming from the other. But it's not going to be quite delineated as though there were a sharp line down the middle. You're going to start to see some of the warms in here and in here, and then on the other side you'll see you're going to start to get some blues kind of in some other parts of the face. Maybe there's some cheekbones and stuff, and that just creates a little more depth and a little more sculpture to it. And again, if we were to if we were to only have, sorry, back too far. Come on. Come on. Give me the face back. There we go. If we were only to go from one side of the face, essentially you're going to make the other half of the face very dark. So this is going to be cool. And then this, you wouldn't really be able to see at all. This would be in darkness if you were coming from a really extreme angle, for instance. If you came from like that kind of angle. So those are the basics of direction and angle as it pertains to lighting design, and like I said, we'll see how that intersects with intensity and get into a little more colored matching detail when we're ready for that.